Hi, this is Deborah at the Labyrinth, and today we're going to go over stuff that burns. Not all of it, but most of it. So we're going to do incense, and we're going to do some herbs, and we're going to do some resins. So I want to show you the vessels that are used for what and how you can use them. So first we'll start with the incense. Now while we do that, I want to show you how we're going to be burning resins, and we're going to be burning some herbs on a charcoal. And these are the charcoals. They come in like 8 or 10, and they look like this. And you just light it. It takes a couple minutes to get it going, so that's why we're going to light this first, because we're going to deal with resins after we go with the incense, and this has to heat up. So what you do is you hold it like this, and it's going to spit out some little red sparks. See the little red sparks there? That means it's a self-lighting charcoal, and you can't use barbecue charcoal, and you can't use just wood charcoal. So you got to use this kind, and it's a self-lighting. It is already lit because it's got smoke coming out of it. It's got a little bit of smoke coming out of it. But yeah, you got to hold it with the lighter till it lights. And I think it's going now. And it's going to take a few minutes, and you want to have it in a heat-safe container. So what I'm using now is my little trusty, that thing is Soapstone. So I want to get this thing lit to where you can see it, because you'll see like an ashy bit there when it's lit, and then you can put it down. I've had these, and when you open them up, you got to put them in a baggie because they're going to get moist. This one's really old, that's why it's taking me a while. The fresh ones don't take this long. So hopefully it'll light. Yeah, see when I blow on it? It's got red here. So that means it's lit. So you got to put it in your little soapstone burner. See a little smoke coming off there, so that's lit. And we're going to let that just sit there for a bit. Now you can use that in a soapstone burner, and whatever burner you use, I recommend that you use a heat-safe surface. So I use like a block of granite here, but you can use a cutting board. You can use one of these here plant things, you know, just as long as it's not touching any surface, just to be safe. You can also use it in a little cauldron, but I would put aluminum foil on the bottom to raise it up so that it gets air. And then this is another burner, just like this soapstone one. And this one holds your charcoal in here or here, and then you could put your stick incense or your cone incense on that too, just like I'm going to show you with that. So the soapstone burner you can use for cone, stick, or charcoal. The burner here, this here is a burner for oil. And you're going to put a candle in there, and it's going to light it. You're going to put on the top some water and drip in your oils. And I'd start with 3 drops. And then you're going to leave the room after 5 or 10 minutes, come back in, because, you know, you get used to the smell. You can always add more, but you can never take out too much. So we're going to start with incense. So I've got some incense here, and this is stick incense here. And we've got some cone, and this is my favorite is the Nag Champa, but this is the super hit. Now, the super hit and cone incense like this, it comes with this little thing. Now, don't use that little thing, because that gets real hot. Your cone can fall off it. It could start a fire. It's really not safe, in my opinion. So I would not use that. So what you're going to use for cone is you're going to use a cone burner. And this is a cone burner. Just put your cone right in here. And you can leave it open or close it. It's up to you. That's a little cone burner. And here's another little cone burner. That's pretty big. You can put a charcoal in that one. So we have all different kinds of cone burners that you could use. You could also use this here and put this upside down. And you could put your cone on that. So that's what we're going to do. Just because I'm lazy and it's easy. So we're going to do that. We're going to burn that. You could also put your stick on that too if you want to. You can put your stick right in there. If I can get it. No, I can't. So we're just going to light that one and see how that goes. So you light your cone, and it's going to get the tip on there. It's going to get a little red, and just going to gently blow it out. And remember, whenever you get rid of incense or charcoal, see, oh, by the way, look at the charcoal here, how it's getting already. See how it's getting the white? Now this is hot, so I got to be careful. I won't be able to pick it up next time. Now this is a reverse incense cone burner. Now this is going to take a minute to go. And what it does is the incense doesn't go up, it burns down. and it fills up that vessel, and it takes about 20 minutes. And if it's not under a fan, or if it's not under any kind of air conditioning unit, that's going to take a minute to come out of the hole. There it goes, coming out of the hole. As long as it doesn't have any air, you know, by it, it's going to fill that up real nice. Another thing that you could use your charcoal in is one of these cauldrons. And these are cast iron, and this is multi-purpose. You can use it with your sage. You can use it with your charcoal to put resins or oils on, or herbs. This here is another burner. Now this you can use for charcoal. I recommend putting sand. If you're going to use salt, I would line it with aluminum foil because salt is corrosive on metal. You can also put your stick incense here. I recommend that this is hung. Now when I had one, I hung it on the edge of a bookshelf, because the thing is, it's really not stable to carry around, in my opinion. So I would just hang it, and I hang it like that, and I'd even put sage in it, let it burn. But I didn't touch it, just leave it alone. They're really pretty to look at, they're decorative, and they do have a purpose. The other thing that you can use for sage or charcoal or oils are the abalone shells. We have two different kinds of abalone shells, the large and the medium. They're very beautiful. Now I do recommend lining these with aluminum foil and then putting in sand or salt on the foil. You're going to overline it like a pie. Leave a lot on the edges, and then you're going to put your salt in or your sand. Then you're going to put your charcoal or your sage, whatever you're going to be burning, because if this shell gets hot, it will bust. It'll just snap right in half. You might hurt yourself, start a fire, all that. So when it's done burning, you're going to take the foil up, and it's going to take everything inside the shell, make sure it's out, and then you throw it away, and then you can reuse it. Your shell is nice and clean. Now for your stick incense, you can use, most people use these, it's called a sled. It's okay if you don't have to worry about nothing, ashes not getting anywhere, because believe me, ashes do get all over the place. But some people burn them in a place where, outside, whatever, you can use that. This is another type of a burner. The stick goes in here, and then this opens up, and you can store your incense inside of it. So it would lay on top, and the ash would collect here, and then you have your incense in here. This is one of my favorites, so this is called a coffin burner. Now the coffin burner, you can put incense on either side, stick, and then you can also use cone here if you want, or not at the same time. I like to leave mine open when it's burned, and if I want it to go out, I'll shut it, but you gotta be careful, it is wood. I have lit mine on fire. Nothing drastic, but it did burn the inside a little bit. And it does have a storage compartment in here for your incense also to keep it nice and dry. And then we have what I call the double wide. Yeah, this is a cool one. This one has two holes in it here for two sticks. And it will retain the ash in here. It's wide enough. It's not going to be really, really messy. And it also has a very big compartment in here for storage of incense. Now, while we're talking about incense, I want to show you, for example, some different types of incense. I showed you the stick and I showed you the cone. There's also what's called incense powders. Now the incense powders, you could form it into a little cone yourself and just burn it in your little burner or vessel. Or you can just sprinkle it on top of the charcoal. Now, I rather just light it on its own versus on the charcoal, because you can. You don't have to go through the step of using the charcoal. They really don't smell. A lot of people try to open these up and smell them. You really can't tell unless it's burning. But they are very, very good, and I really like the powders. Now, as far as the resins go, and that's what we're going to be using on this today, is resins and herbs. Oh, and by the way, with this burner here, the reverse burner, you can't use regular cones. I tried making a hole in it because I like the nog chomper. It doesn't work. So, unfortunately, you have to get the cones that are specifically made for that burner. They're made out of different materials, not like the same thing as this kind of incense. So, I mean, they're reasonably priced, but still, you can't switch them. So now, a resin, you see what a resin looks like versus a powder. See, this is very finely ground, this powder. And this here, it's little chunks. This has copal, Yeah, this is copal. This is copal, which is similar to like a frankincense. It's for clearing and cleansing and purification. It's a resin. It comes from a plant, okay? It's the oozing part of the plant that hardens up and then they scrape it off, versus things that are crushed together to make a powder. So what you're going to do is you're going to place a tiny, tiny bit on your charcoal. You don't want to smother it, so less is more. So look at how many I only put in there. See if it's too hot. No, almost too hot. You want to see that. That's as much as I put. Now you can see it's bubbling up. It's bubbling up, and the smoke is coming off there from the resin. So what you're going to do is this is going to be in a stationary place. You're not going to carry it around. When I do a house cleaning or whatever, I put it on the kitchen table, and I will periodically go over and put more on it. You can always add more, but again, you'll smother it. It's hard to get it off. So just put a few on there, and actually I put a little bit too much. See how long it takes? And it does release a lot of smoke. So be very careful with certain resins in an area that is not well ventilated, because I don't know if we're going to have the smoke alarm go off, but we'll see. Anyway, that's that, and that charcoal is going to burn for quite some time. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is when you're burning sage. Okay, we've got a lot of stuff burning here. When you're burning sage, you can burn it. Yeah, you can burn it on the charcoal, but my attitude is, why go through the extra step? What I use is the little cauldron here, like this here, or you can use the shell. You could use that if you're burning other stuff and then you want to put sage on it. So we'll just throw a piece of sage. You're going to use a very tiny, tiny bit on there, because that thing's going to just poof. So when you're lighting your sage, you want to put a little bit in here. We're just going to use a little bit. You don't need a lot. And what you're going to do is you're going to light it. And you're going to let it flame up a little bit. See how it's flaming up a little bit? You don't want the whole thing to burn into nothing. So you're going to gently blow it. And now you've got the smoke from the sage. And now you can go around and you can sage whatever area you need to sage to clean the area, or clean an item, or whatever you want to do, clean yourself. That's another good thing to do, is the sage. Now, when you see this here, now the resin is almost burned off, if you can see it. The resin is almost, that's getting kind of hot. The resin is almost burned off, so now it's going to start to burn the sage. See, it's burning the sage now. The resin is almost done right in here. It's just mush right now. It's just a bubbling mass. And now the sage is starting to light. That thing gets really hot. Now, say I wanted to use herbs on it. Well, I can do that. I can certainly do herbs on it. So what I would do is just a tiny bit, and please make sure your herbs are not toxic. We don't want to be in a toxic environment, such as copal, frankincense, a lot of herbs and oils. You don't want to be in an enclosed space because they can be toxic. Anise, a lot of herbs. You got to be careful. Wormwood. Be careful with the Vesta powder. That's another thing. Be careful if you're going to use Vesta powder. Use it outside and make sure it's not dry season, because that thing can go all over the place. So I'm just going to put a couple of sprinkles here of the lavender. I'm going to show you that. Now, that's all you need, that little bit. You can see the copal is still burning, the sage is burning now, and now we also have the lavender starting to burn at the same time. So a little goes a long way, and if you look at the sage over here, I hardly lit the sage. There was hardly any in there, just a few leaves, and you can see how much smoke is coming out of that. So don't overload your sage. You know, I make that mistake sometimes myself, and then you wind up wasting it or relighting it later and it smells kind of funky or whatever. So, and look at the incense now from that reverse burner. Isn't that gorgeous? They're really cool looking. And this is my upside down burner. So there's lots of ways to use herbs and oils. I'll show you what an oil looks like on there. I'm gonna see if I can knock that off. Nah, it might be too hot. No, it's not. All right. Okay, now this here is sage oil. And this is a concentrated oil. So what you can do is you can mix it with, say, a base oil. You can mix it with either almond oil, and I would prefer you use one that does not need to be refrigerated, because if it's refrigerated, it'll get cloudy. So the non-refrigerated almond oil, and you can get it in health food store, or you could use, if you use olive oil. Oh, and the almond oil has a shelf life of 5 years, the non-refrigerated kind. A lot of people say, oh, well, I'll just use olive oil. Well, olive oil has a tendency to go rancid. So if you're not going to use the oil within a week, I would say make a new batch. So any oil that you use as what's called a carrier, which could be tea tree, it could be almond oil, it could be olive oil. Don't use mineral oil. That's man-made and it's disgusting. Don't use that. You could use other oils. Make sure that they're, you know, they're not man-made. And you're going to just put a few drops into that, and then you're going to shake it up, smell it, and then you're going to use that. But if you're going to use it on oil, I'm going to show you, you're only going to put a couple of drops. Now look at that. I put one, it was 2 drops, and it's still burning. You can see that heavy smoke is from the oil. And that's the sage. And it's still going. So I'll put another, oh, that smells nice. Put one more drop. There we go. I dropped it all over the table, but I got 1 drop on there. So that is how you use the oils on the charcoal. I personally don't do that as a rule. I use my oils on candles. It disperses the smell. You don't use as much. You don't drip it all over, because I drip everything all over. Or you can use one of those burners there. So I'm going to put this little sage back on. So that's how you can burn, and this doesn't cover everything, believe me. This is just, I would use a charcoal for my herbs or my resins. I would use my incense just for incense. And I would use a sage pot or a shell for charcoal or your sage. But don't use these, remember, don't use these little things. They're no good. I don't know why they put them in there. They're no good. Fire hazard. So the thing, when it burns, it can fall off. They're horrible. Don't use those. So these are the things that most people use. I personally like the bigger ones and the coffin, because I'm very messy and I don't like the mess. I love the powders, because the powders actually, if I were to buy, say, a pack of this would last me at least 3 times more than this, because this has 12 in it. And as you can see, there's 1 burning there. If I took 1 out of here and made it, I've got a lot left. And once it's lit, you stir it up and you relight it, because it just burns forever. It's great. I can show you that if you want to see that. Let me show you that. We'll just dump this in here. And I'll use this, and I'll show you how this works. I'm going to put it in the bottom, because that's holy right there. It's got holes. Now remember I said you only use a little bit, so this is the amount that I'm using. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when you light it. When you light it, it's going to get these little red dots on it. And when you get the little red dots on it, that's how you know it's lit. You'll start to see it get red. See, it's already starting now to get these little red dots. Now, you see those little red dots there? See them? Now that's going to burn for quite some time. Now, when that burns for a while, I know you can see the little red dots in there, but anyway, they're there. They're in there. See them? There they go. I'm just doing this so you can see it burn, what part's burning here. That's going to go for quite some time. Now that might go out, but what I would do is I usually have like a little horseshoe nail or paper clip or something, and then I would stir it. I would stir it up, because you're going to have some incense powder that is not burned, and then you're going to relight it. And that's what I like about this incense powder. I've used other incense powders from Mexico, from South America. I don't like them. They're very powdery, like talcum powder, and they're overly scented. I don't know how people feel about scent, but they're substandard. I think they're substandard. This I find is really good quality and it lasts a long time. And if you just blow on it, it'll just keep going for a while. So that's the incense powder. So I hope that I've given you some information for all you firebugs out there that like to burn things. I know I do. So you have many ways to do it, but just please remember to be cautious. Remember to have heat-safe surface. Remember that the heat of a charcoal cannot get on a surface except for iron, the cast iron, or the soapstone. You don't want to use it in wood. You don't want to use it directly on a shell. It'll ruin it. It'll start a fire. No good. You also don't want to use it in an oil burner. You don't want to do that. An oil burner is for oil, and that's that. So if you have any questions, just give me a call. We are open now Monday through Saturday from 10 to 7. Our psychic fair is coming up this Saturday from 10 to 4. Reduced price for readings and services, $25 for 25 minutes. And also, I'm not requiring you to wear a mask, okay? It's up to you. You have free will. You can wear it if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. I also have hand sanitizer at the counter. If you would like to use that, you're more than welcome to. And we do have a washroom where you can wash your hands with soap and water. And we even have some hand cream for you. So, and like I said, any questions, just give me a call, 239-939-2769. And happy burning. But be careful, okay? Don't start a fire. Don't burn yourself. Have a great Memorial weekend. Thank you.